So when you Google Common App, you come to this page. This is just the landing page. And to create an account, you just click on the upper right-hand corner where it says create an account. For you guys, you're all going to be first year students. So there are different applications within the Common App, but you're going to choose first year student, and then you'll come to this first page. To create your account, you're going to need an email address. And I know you guys all have guidance from Upward Bound about best practices of how to do this. I'm going to share some of our best practices really quickly. Always default to your Upward Bound counselor for if there's conflicting information, ask them what they would like for you to do. But Marjan and I always recommend that students have a clear, clean email address for the college application process. So something that's not cluttered with a lot of personal emails or even emails from your high school career. And this email will go over with you throughout the entire application process. So again, talk to your Upward Bound counselor about that before you create a whole new email address. But make sure that you have something where you're going to see everything that comes in and it doesn't get sent to spam or lost in the mix of all of your other emails. Okay, so you're going to need to put an email address here, and then you're going to need a password, and it gives you all the parameters for the password. Another best practice for saving your password, because you are going to be opening this document many times over the next few months. So you're going to want to make sure you have that password. I always recommend, if you have a cell phone, that you create a Common App in your contacts. So just as if you would save my name and my information, create Common App, save your email that you're going to use, and save your password. Okay, and then it's just going to ask you for some information, your first name, last name, phone number. If you have a phone number to put in there, you can put either a cell or a landline, your date of birth. You're going to need to add your address, and just answer these questions at the bottom. You're also going to need to look at their terms of use and privacy policy. It is pretty extensive, but try to at least glance through that and read some of the information about that before you check this box. And then once you agree, you're going to check the box and choose create account. Now, I didn't put any information in here, but once you check create account, it'll come up to a page that looks like this. Okay, and then in the upper right-hand corner, you can see I'm using my middle name. So you can see Welcome Marie, and it has a CAID, so Common App ID. Also put this number in your contact in your phone or in your planner or journal, wherever you're going to keep that information. Okay, and so I'm already signed into an account that I've created. The reason I'm not going to create a new account is because one of the things you agree to in the terms of use is that you won't create more than one account. And I'm already sort of cheating here by having an account, and I'm not really a student. So I'm not going to try to create a new account today. So that's how you open an account. Again, we're going to attach a video to this week's lesson that will walk you step by step, and it'll go through each one of those screens, and you can see exactly how to do it. I know that was a quick overview. Okay, and then once you get the account and sign in, this is what it looks like. So I'm going to do a brief overview before Marjan jumps into the My Colleges tab. So when you come, you'll see the dashboard here. Right now, it looks like this. But once you add colleges, all of those colleges will show up here on the dashboard. Okay, so you'll have the colleges show up here, and you can get to the colleges through this page. The next tab is My Colleges. That's what Ms. Marjan is going to go through today. And again, once you've added colleges, they will show up here as well. This is the Common App tab. This is where you actually start to fill in all of your information. So you can see on the left-hand side, there's profile, family, education, testing, activities, writing, and courses and grades. Those little green checks are because I've already completed those sections. Every time you complete a section of the Common App, you will get a green check in this left-hand box. The next page is the college search page, and this is where you're going to start to search for your colleges. And again, Marjan will cover that part. And there's a great financial aid resources tab at the top as well. This is very comprehensive. So lots of information here. There's a link to the net price calculator. If you want to see how much your expected contribution would be for each of your colleges, you can click there. So information about scholarships. So really a nice section on financial aid. So that's it for a quick overview of what the layout of the Common App is. And I'm going to turn it over now to Marjan to talk about My Colleges.
Okay, great. So does anybody have any questions before we start looking again at anything else? No? All right. Well, if you ever have a question, you can always type it in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and just say, hey, I have a question, and we'll be happy to stop. So I'm going to now share my screen with you. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So going back to the main page, what Miss Tracy just showed you was how to create your account. Once you have it set up, you don't have to go to that button anymore. This is when you put in Common App, it'll come up and this will be your landing page, and you'll just go to login. So again, obviously I'm not a first-year student, but I want to show you the experience as best as possible. So I'm going to click on first-year student, which is what you'll do. And then I'm going to put in my information. Now, if you have the option, you might want to go ahead and put your have it save your login. So it'll just come up. If not, remember to have it saved in your phone or written down somewhere that you can come back to it. So I'm just going to do that. Then I hit sign in. And I just want to make a quick note, because on the previous page, it said first year student, and then it also said transfer student. And just in case any of you are curious for down the road, and Laura or Tracy, please correct me if I misrepresent this, but even if you have college credit, like you took classes at the community college, or certainly your AP credits, you are still applying as a first year student. So even if you have enough credits that you'll be starting as, say, a sophomore in college with your credit hours, you're still a first year student. So don't do transfer, because you weren't transferring from the community college. Is that correct?
We
Tracy?
do have a few students like Gus who are attending Ash Early College.
Okay. So in that case,
I think for them, it depends on, some of them will graduate from early college with an associate's degree.
Okay.
And then we do also have a couple who graduate from early college, but they end up just getting a high school diploma with like some college credits. So that's really on a case-by-case basis. We have to see what they graduate with. We've also got some students down at Burke Middle College that y'all will work with in the same situation.
Okay.
So I'll let you know who those are.
Sure. So, but just for the majority of you, if you took one class or a couple of classes at the community college, you're still applying as a first year student. So this is where you'll land. So you see me, I'm here, welcome Marjan, and then it's giving me some directions about, this is my dashboard. It's kind of like your homepage. Once you've logged in, it's your homepage. So if you're ever looking through and you're trying to get back to the beginning, you can just click on dashboard and it'll take you back. So I don't have any colleges entered now because I wanted to show you the process, but I'm going to click here and you'll see you must first add a college to your My Colleges before you can see anything. So I can, from this page, go to college search, but I can also do it up here. It'll take me to the same place. So I'm going to go to college search and I'm going to put in some schools. So we looked at the list of schools that you guys were applying to, and we're going to focus primarily on your REACH schools, but we can put really anything in. Just so you know, not every college and university in the country or out of the country, Aberystwyth is in Wales and the United Kingdom, but I don't think any of you are applying there probably. If you search for a school and it's not in the system, it may be because that school does not use the Common App, in which case you shouldn't omit them from your list, but just note that that's going to be a separate application process. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to start, let's be super aspirational. Let's go ahead and put Harvard in. Why not? I wouldn't have gotten in, certainly, as a high school student, but that's okay. So we're looking at Harvard, and you can see you've got some general information here. You've got a phone number for the school, for the admissions office if you had questions, an email address, their physical address. You can get to their website. You can do all sorts of stuff. So this is meant not only to be a vehicle for you to add colleges to your list in your application, but also for you to learn more information. So if there are some schools that you're still kind of wavering, considering, you could look them up here and then get to their website and learn more about them. They have a virtual tour, etc. So moving down, that we've got some more information that'll be really helpful to know. So their application deadlines. The first year, so that's you guys, they have restrictive early action, which is one of those early deadlines, and that's going to be November 1st. And then regular decision is January 1st. So you would just want to keep that in mind in your application process. They have their application fees. They have standardized test policy. So they are not requiring, the Ivy League schools, I think by and large, are not requiring tests this year because of COVID. Their course and grades, they're apparently not using them as well. And then you can see information about recommendations. So a lot of this will come when you contact your school counselor, getting the school report, a counselor recommendation. All of this stuff is, once you have contacted your counselor, they will know to do this stuff for you. Teacher evaluations, you have to provide 2. And Tracy's going to talk about this some more in a bit. And then you have an optional 3rd. So that's something to consider. And then you could also have other recommendations that, again, Tracy will talk about. You can go further down and see what else is required. So they're going to require the Common App personal essay, which you guys have been working on over the summer. And then they have some additional questions. And we're going to be talking about these later in the this course, this Common App course that we're doing. But just this gives you a nice overview of everything that they're going to require. Obviously, you have to fill out the rest of the application, but this is giving you an overview of what kind of writing and recommendation requirements they have. So I'm going to add them to my colleges. And so now if I go to my colleges, you can see Harvard is listed here. So it would be foolish to only apply to Harvard. No one should do that. No one anywhere in the world. That's a silly idea. So we're not going to do that either. We're going to add some other options. So let's add in UNC. Okay. So you can see if I put in UNC, this is really important to note. I could put in North Carolina, or I could put, let's see if I put just Chapel Hill, what happens? It comes up. But if I had UNC, which is how most of us abbreviate it, I get Asheville, Chapel Hill, Charlotte, Greensboro, Wilmington, and then Northern Colorado. So there's sometimes the abbreviations might not be what you think. So you need to pay attention to make sure that you're applying to the school you mean to apply to. So in this case, I'm talking about Chapel Hill. So I'm going to add them in. And again, we see all of their information. So the contact info, again, at the top. We have deadlines. Their early action deadline, again, is October 15th. Regular decision is January 15th. You have your fees. They're not requiring tests. They're not using courses and grades. Again, they require 1 teacher evaluation, and you can optionally have a second one if you want. They also have their own questions. They have the personal essay that you guys worked on, and then they have their own questions that you have to answer as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add them to my colleges. All right, let's add a couple more just for good measure. So go back to college search. Let's do something a little different. What do you guys call the university in Boone? This is kind of a trick, but not really. Just anybody, what's the name of the university in Boone?
Appalachian State University.
Oh, come on. That's not what you were supposed to say. You were supposed to say the nickname. You just ratted me out. Okay, that's fine. So if I put in Appalachian State University, it's going to come up. What are some other names that you might call it? Like nicknames.
App State.
App State. Okay, so I'm going to put in App State. And that doesn't come up. So that's problematic, right? So if I were applying to school and I'd never done this before and I put in, I'm like, it's called App State. Everybody knows it's called App State. And I don't see it, then I might think it's not actually in there, which would be incorrect. So I might think, okay, well, maybe it's ASU, Arizona State University. Okay. Outside of North Carolina, ASU is typically known to be Arizona State University. So if that's what you're looking for, that's great. But obviously, again, that's not what I mean. Now, I can't see who said Appalachian State, the smarty pants who knew that was the correct answer. But I'm going to start writing Appalachian. Ah, here we go. Appalachian State. So it comes up, and now I can see all of their information. So for App State, or Appalachian State University, of course, we're being formal here. This is the Common App. We've got our contact info, and then they have deadlines. So you want to make sure that you're in a case like this where they have two different sets of deadlines. You are looking at the semester that you want to be entering school. So you guys are not applying for spring 2021. You're applying for fall 2021. So early action is going to be November 1st. Regular decision is February 1st. And then they have a rolling admission, which means that they still consider you, but it's not as you won't be considered for scholarships and things like that. And your admissions chances vary if there's a rolling admission. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the correct deadlines. If you were applying for the spring, you'd have a different set of deadlines. So they have a note here that's really important, is that in order to be eligible for the signature scholarships, which is what they have at App State, is like the really big ticket, high dollar scholarships, full tuition or that sort of thing. You must submit your application by November 1st. So you have to do early action. You have the early action deadline in order to be considered for scholarships. Now, as you guys probably know already, early action is not binding. So you can apply to as many early action schools as you want by their deadlines. You can only apply to one early decision. You can apply all the regular decisions you want, but only one early decision. So in this case, if you were to apply early action, you aren't bound to attend if you get in. But you are making yourself eligible for their scholarships. So here we have information. This is interesting. Tracy, could you chime in here for a second on the standardized test policy? I thought all UNC schools had waived.
It's probably just not been updated yet. Laura, do you know anything different about App State? I think it's probably just not been updated in the Common App.
Yeah, I think that if you move ahead with some of the UNC schools, if you move into the application, there's a question that says, will you be submitting standardized test scores? And you can say yes or no. So they have made it optional.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've seen that before in the Common App this year. There are a couple of things that still have not kind of caught up.
So don't be freaked out. If your intention is not to submit test scores, don't be overly concerned. Go ahead and add a school, even if you're not wanting to submit your test scores, because until you submit, you can always remove a school. So if you want to apply to a school under the assumption that you don't have to submit your test scores, and then you see this and you're like, I'm not sure, but you get into the application, if they do in fact require test scores, then you can decide if you want to submit or not. But just note that everybody is trying to play catch up with the COVID situation and testing. So again, just keep that in mind. Here we see that App State does not require any letters of recommendation, but you can submit up to 3 and up to 3 other types. And they also have an additional question along with the Common App personal essay. So again, this is going to be helpful when you're trying to organize all of your materials, which we'll talk about another time, but that's going to get you started. So I'm going to add App State. And now if I go to my colleges, I see I've got App State, Harvard, and UNC Chapel Hill. I'm going to add one more just for good measure. Anybody want to shout out a school that somebody tell us the school that you are applying to maybe one of your reaches. None of you are applying to college. This is problematic.
UNC Charlotte.
UNC Charlotte. Okay. So again, we put in UNC. We need to make sure that we're picking the right one, right? So we've got Charlotte here. Okay. Not Asheville, not Greensboro. I'm picking Charlotte. So I'm going to put it in. And you can see, again, all of their information. Early action, not decision. Early action is November 1st. Regular decision, and they've got rolling admissions. They have a note here that a complete application and fee must be received by the below deadlines. No, we utilize the document receipt date for all deadlines, so please allow 2 to 3 weeks for mail documents and electronic test scores to be received. So just, again, you want to try to get everything done a little bit in advance. They also have a note on scholarships, and you can go to their scholarship office to learn more about that. And so you just want to make sure that you are reading the fine details about each school, so you don't just see this deadline and assume, okay, if I get it in by this time, it's all right, because maybe there's, if I want to be a Levine Scholar, I have to be nominated by October 8th. Okay, that's important to know. There's another application that I have to do. So keep those things in mind. You got your fees. Okay, so you can see here they've updated to say that they're not requiring tests. You can have one teacher evaluation, but you don't have to. You can have one other one. They have a note here about test score or reporting tests. And they have one extra question. So again, this is not going to automatically make you eligible for scholarships at any individual school. They might have a separate deadline. Some schools might automatically consider you for scholarships. So just make sure that you've got all the deadlines identified so that you don't miss out on any opportunities. I'm going to add them to my colleges if I want to double check to make sure that they're there. I go
Marjan,
yes.
can I interrupt for 1 second? Sure. Do you mind going back to that page?
Sure.
I just want to, this is a complete sidebar that doesn't have that much to do with what we're talking about this morning, but I think it is important. Can you go down to all the way down, Levine Scholars here?
Yeah.
So guys, this says must be nominated by school counselor by October the 8th. It's important to let your school know if you're applying to schools that have these special scholarships with super early deadlines, like the, what's the Chapel Hill one?
The Moorhead.
Moorhead, thank you. Park Scholarship, Moorhead Kane. And those scholarships have really early deadlines, and your school counselors cannot know your intentions at this point in the game. So October the 8th is super early. Most counselors have no idea what you're doing by that early deadline. And then it's too late to apply. So proactively go to your counselor or your college. If you have a college counselor, if you have a scholarship coordinator at your school, go to that person and say, just ask what the nominating process is and let them know that you're applying to UNC Charlotte and you'd like to be considered for the Levine Scholars Program. And maybe they have different schools handle it different ways. At my old school, we used to require that you write a short essay to be considered for some of these higher level scholarships. So again, the biggest point here is just make sure that you're on top of this, because counselors have a lot of students. They have a lot going on. Plus this year, there's a whole new aspect added in. So be proactive. Don't be embarrassed. Go to the counselor or send them an email and say, hey, I'd like to be considered for the Levine Scholarship. Can you tell me what the process is? Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, every school is going to have different types of things. And so I mentioned some schools might automatically consider you for these early scholarships. Some will have a separate application process. Here you have to be nominated and then you submit an application. So there's a lot involved. The reason for this in this particular one is that this is full tuition. So that's why it's such a big process for you to be considered. So just make sure that you're on top of it. And of course, we're here to help you get organized to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row so you're not forgetting anything. Does anybody have any questions about the My Colleges tab or college search?
I do.
Yes.
So if you do get nominated for one of those scholarships, do you have to like somehow include that in your Common App or no?
It's going to depend on each school and their process.
Okay.
So some schools, they might have a box that you check to say like, I'm doing this. Some might have it built in to, you know, again, it might be that their supplemental questions are part of their scholarship process. You just need to make sure that you know what you have to do for each school. This is, you guys, this is kind of like having a job on top of being in school. Applying to college is no joke, as you know. So you want to make sure that everything is as orderly as possible. And that's also why it's really important that we have our weekly meetings with you guys, because we can help make sure that you're on top of everything, because we'll be able to look at your account and make sure that you have everything, you know, done in a timely fashion. So
Okay, thank you.
not super satisfying, I know, but that's it's just every school is going to be a little bit different. Anybody else?
I feel like I've said this to you guys before, but for those scholarships like the Moorhead Kane and the Park Scholarship and the Levine Scholars, like it's great to do those applications and it's an honor to be nominated, but don't get your heart set on those as like, you know, your dream to like get the Moorhead and go to Chapel Hill, because they give 70 scholarships a year and it comes from students worldwide, and they're really a little ridiculous. And so it's great if you want to do those applications, you should try and we'll help you with it. But don't like take it super serious and feel really disappointed if you don't get it, because they're very competitive. And there's lots of other ways you can get a full ride.
Yeah, no, that's really important to note too. And the goal is, I mean, obviously it'd be great to get one of those scholarships, but more importantly, our aim is to get into the school, right? We'll figure out the money on the other side. So we want to make sure that your application is as strong as possible, because if you don't get in, then you certainly can't be considered for a, you know, super great scholarship. So let's focus on the applications and making sure that your essays and supplemental questions and the application itself is as good as it can possibly be. And then you might want to cobble together scholarships. There might be grants, all sorts of stuff. You know, Levine and others are awesome, but as Ms. Laura said, they're not the end all be all. Any other questions? Okay, well, if you have any more, you can ask me or ask us in just a bit. I'm going to stop presenting now and hand it back over to Tracy.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and I do just want to go off of where you were, Marjan, to start with the recommendation process. So bear with me. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the My Colleges tab. Actually, I don't have any schools in My Colleges, so let me add one real quick. What's happening? There we go. Okay, so back to the dashboard page. Once you've added, or I'm sorry, the My Colleges page. Once you've added all those schools in the left-hand column, you can click on that, and then you can see underneath the first tab says college information. Again, that's a repeat of what we saw when we Googled the college or when we searched the college before we added it. And then below that, it says application. And it'll take you to each individual section of what the questions are that they ask. And we're going to have a whole other class on this part. So that's not what I wanted to show you. But the part I'm going to cover today is the recommenders and FERPA. So this is where you will go under each individual college's tab and click on recommenders and FERPA. So you can see this is where you invite your recommenders. So I'm not going to go too much into this release right now. I have a little bit of that in my presentation that we'll look at. So I don't want to go into that. It's pretty detailed and lengthy. But if you choose invite recommenders, you'll see it gives you a choice. So you can invite your counselor, your teacher, other recommender, parents, advisors. And then here's where you do need to invite your counselor because they're the ones who are going to supply the school report to the Common App for you. Here is teachers, select teachers, and then that's where you put in email addresses. Make sure that you have everything correct in here before you invite teachers. And we'll talk about the process. You would never invite a teacher here and put in the information before you've asked and received permission to use that teacher as a recommender. So this only happens after you've made the ask. Okay, and then here's a place for other recommenders. And then at the very bottom of this page, you can also invite people to be advisors for you. Laura, do you guys have the students add you as advisors?
So usually we do not have the students add us as advisors just because we usually will get on the Common App at the same time as the student. Like we would sit there beside them and have them log in and look at it together.
Okay.
And so nowadays we are getting on a Zoom call and having them log on and share screen with us so we can go through it that way.
Okay, great.
But what we do have them do is add us as we'll usually be one of the other recommenders and we can write a letter for them about what they've done through Upward Bound.
Okay, great.
That's sort of how what we'll do. So all of you already have one other recommender through me or Erin or Kim or Jessica. And you can just add us. You don't have to ask. But you might want to add Tracy and Marjan as advisors.
Yeah, I was going to suggest it is really helpful for us if you will add us as an advisor, that for us to be able to follow along with you. We can't make any changes to your application as advisors. All we can do is look at it. But it's helpful for me, for instance, if you filled out the activities section, then I can go in on my own and not use our individual meeting time. I can go in ahead of our individual meeting and look at what you've put in so that when we meet to talk about activities, I can say, okay, here's what I noticed, something about spelling or punctuation or formatting or whatever. I can already have that prepared before we meet. So if you guys will invite us, then here's what you do. You invite another advisor, put in the email address, and we'll share our email addresses for Marjan's going to be working with half of you, and I'm going to be working with half of you as far as the individual meetings go. So we'll send our students that we're working with our email address and information to put in here. So I'm just going to put this in real quick. I think I've already invited myself, but let's try this again. I just want to show you there is one other thing that you have to do once you invite somebody. Okay, and then you have to enable preview. Okay, so you're just agreeing that you understand how the application preview for a counselor advisor works, and you have to enable the preview. Okay, so that's it for that, but I wanted to show you where the information is located that we're going to be talking about next. So now I'm going to share, sorry. One second, guys, sorry. Okay, so let's talk about the letter of recommendation. So we are in very unique times, as we all know. So things are a little bit different from what we would normally recommend for students, simply because some of you don't have access to ask a teacher in a live setting. So this presentation is going to be a little bit adjusted for COVID, and hopefully we'll be back to normal next year, but that doesn't help you guys. So let's talk about why it's important to have a great recommendation. So this is a survey from admissions counselors and how important they think the recommendation letters are. So you can see that first column, considerable importance. 14% consider the teacher recommendation of considerable importance. 40% consider it moderately important. So some things I want you to see is that in some cases, the teacher recommendation ranks higher than the class ranking, higher than your extracurricular activities in certain cases. So just so that you're aware, it's really important that you have good letters of recommendation. Okay, so who should you ask? So you should always ask somebody from a core subject, and that means English, math, science, or social studies. I would throw in there that you could ask somebody in a foreign language as well. You probably need to stick to these 4 core subjects, but if you don't have somebody in one of these subjects and you have a great reference from a foreign language, that might suffice. There are occasions where, depending on what you're majoring in, let's say you're majoring in art or music, those colleges and those majors may ask you specifically for references from those subject teachers rather than the core subject teachers. But in general, you're going to ask from your 4 core subjects. And then you want to ask someone who taught you recently. So junior year is definitely the best year to ask from. Now, again, because of the situation we had last year where a lot of you went home early on in the spring semester, maybe there's somebody from the fall semester who got to know you through teaching a whole semester with you. It's important to think this through and go back to as early as fall of junior year. You really do not want to go much earlier than that. If you have somebody outstanding from sophomore year and you've kept in touch with them, there could be maybe a time where that would work, but it's usually going to be somebody from your junior year. And senior year doesn't work because you really just haven't gotten to know your senior teachers, right? By the time you submit college applications. Now, there could be a unique situation there too, but typically it's going to be your junior year. You want it
real quick.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and of course, if you had a teacher earlier, like freshman year, and then you have them again, junior year, it's not that you can't use someone from freshman year. It's just they need to have also been familiar with more recent material.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marjan. And then you also want someone who knows you well and likes you. So you don't want to just tick this box off on the application. You need to put some thought into this and really choose carefully who you ask to be a recommender. Again, someone who teaches a core subject. And this says, important note, some colleges require or recommend that students submit recommendations from teacher in certain subject areas. So that's what I was talking about with art, music, different things like that. If you have a teacher in that area, some colleges may want you to ask that specific teacher. So it does not help the college get to know you if the recommender doesn't know you. Okay, so important to think about who you're asking. Okay, so now that you've thought about who to ask, let's talk about how do you ask. So in a perfect world, which we're not obviously living in right now, you would ask in person. I always advise students to ask in person. And there are a few reasons for that. One is because you can gauge a person's response when you see them live. So, oh goodness, we're running late on time. I'm going to cruise through this. So always, if possible, ask in person. Now I'm going to tell you when to do that and how to do that. But in some of the circumstances, for instance, the Watauga students, you can't be in person. So you could possibly do a phone call to the school. Don't call somebody's cell phone. And then there's also an email ask. Don't never text. So text is not a thing. So you always want to ask in advance. Right now is the time you should be asking. So as soon as you know the colleges you're applying to and see who needs recommendations and who doesn't, some colleges, as we saw when Marjan rolled through those few that we put in, don't even require recommendations. Okay. So you need to know that, but then you need to ask as soon as possible. And don't group ask. Don't go with your friends at the end of class and say, oh, could you be our recommender? Because that puts the teacher in a really uncomfortable position. And they don't like that. That means they're not going to write you a good recommendation letter.
And don't send a group email to all your potential recommenders.
Yes.
Ask
Good
them
point.
all individually.
Okay, so just super quick on the right-hand side, remember these rules of etiquette. Don't run in and ask right before class, right? Teachers are preparing, they're ready to start class, they're kind of settling in from the last class, so that's just too fast. And obviously you would never ask in the middle of class. The better options are to schedule a meeting. So you could ask your teacher, this is when you can ask live. And then you could also shoot an email asking if they have 5 minutes to chat and get that scheduled. That's a really great idea if you can have their undivided attention for a few minutes. And then you could also wait until all the students have left the classroom. But again, this kind of runs the same as asking right before class because they inevitably have another class coming in. So it's almost the same thing. So I don't really recommend asking between classes. Okay, here's a sample dialogue. Marjan, will you be Miss Smith?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to say, Miss Smith, do you have 5 minutes to talk?
Yes.
Well, I'm in the throes of applying to college. I've got some deadlines in about 3 months, so I'm trying to be proactive and organized. That's why I'm here. Of all the teachers I've had, I think you know me best, and I'm wondering, would you be willing and able to write me a strong letter of recommendation?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks so much. Do you have a form that students fill out for this sort of thing, or should I email you my resume?
Oh, I didn't realize I was reading. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't see that. I was just kind of ad-libbing. Oh, Johnny, I thought you never asked. Okay, yes. Send me your resume and anything else you think that would help. Thanks.
Okay,
Johnny.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Marjan. So the point here is that you're asking ahead of time. So this student had 3 months left. You don't have that luxury at this point for the most part, but do ask again, goes back to just asking as early as possible. Okay, and then moving on. So now that you know how to ask, you're not finished. This is really just the beginning. So you need to follow up on that initial conversation. So once you have a teacher agree, then you need to go ahead and write up an email. Teachers are so busy. You guys know this. They have a lot of students. They have now online students, they have live students, they have a mixture of everything going on. Plus they have their own lives to think about. So it's just a really busy time for teachers, and really every year is busy for teachers. Teachers really don't have a lot of downtime. So the sooner you follow up with an email, the better. And that means go home that night, or if you've asked in an email, go ahead and follow up with another email that night or the next day before they've forgotten that you asked, because they have so many other things going on. So for the follow-up email, you're going to do all of these things. You're going to have a heart of gratitude, and you're going to have a completed questionnaire about yourself. I'm going to show you an example if we have time at the end. And if we don't have time, I do have a great video that shows all of these examples in it. So if we don't get to that questionnaire, you can see that in the video. You do want to be detailed, and you want to have an up-to-date professional resume. So hopefully all of you have a resume. This just helps the teacher see what kind of things you do, especially things outside of school. So they only may know you as the student in that one class. But obviously that's not the whole sum of who you are, right? So you want to let them know that you also volunteer at the Humane Society, or you take care of your little brothers and sisters while your mom and dad work, or whatever it is you do. All those things should be outlined in the recommendation letter. I mean, in your questionnaire that you're sending for them. Okay, and then just a brief paragraph about what you hope to study and any relevant information like that. Okay, so let's see. Here's a sample follow-up email. Dear Miss Smith, I hope this email finds you well. First of all, thank you. It means a lot that you're writing me a letter. To make the process smoother, I've included my current resume as well as attached questionnaire to remind you of all my amazing qualities. Hee hee. Now, that's sort of a personal thing. I don't know how I feel about being joking like that, but that depends on your relationship with the teacher. Maybe you have a rapport like this where that's a comfortable thing to do. If not, just be more professional, and you don't have to say anything like that. Just be more straightforward. Okay, and then he goes on to say, otherwise, here's what you need to know in brief. I'm applying to the University of Texas, Stanford, and USC. All three schools have a deadline of November 15th, so you've got plenty of time. I hope to study mechanical engineering with a minor in philosophy, regardless of where I end up. But Stanford is my number one because I get to take classes at the D school, which is, I think, the design school, to supplement my studies. My dream job, NASA. That's it. Again, thank you. Thank you for doing this for me. Please let me know if there's anything else you need or if you have any follow-up questions. And if it's okay with you, I'll probably send a check-in email maybe a week or two before the deadline to make sure all is well. In the meantime, I hope you have a beautiful day. So you can see that's just a really thoughtful email following up. He's going to attach the questionnaire. He's going to attach the resume. And I would go one step further, and this could be as part of the questionnaire, but you want to make sure that you point out what you would like the teacher to address. So if something happened in the class, let's say that a student next to you was struggling in math class and you stayed after for a few minutes to help them with a problem, or maybe there was a student out who was sick and you offered to help catch them up with notes and whatnot, you can remind the teacher of that, because colleges really want to see who you are as a person. They can see all of the quantitative stuff, right? They have your test scores and your grades and your GPA and everything like that throughout the Common App, but they can't see who you are as a person. And if the teacher in their recommendation letter can say something about you just being a great person and speak to your character, that is really ideal. So don't be afraid to point something out to a teacher just as a reminder, because again, they have a million students, they've got a lot going on. They're not going to remember that day that you stayed late to help Susie catch up on her work. So it's okay to remind them. Okay, and here's the link to the questionnaire. We're going to skip that. Again, it's in the video that we're going to attach from the week. And just a final thought on recommendation letters. So you're done, right, after all that? No. You have to write a personal thank you note to everyone you ask to be a recommender who is actually a recommender for you. Do not skip this step. Super important. Okay, we have like 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions at all?
I just wanted to say something real quick. I haven't written high school recommendations, but I've written recommendations as for college students when they're applying to grad school or for internships. And it's really helpful when the student provides those personal details, a reminder, especially if they took my class a year ago, because what you really want for the colleges to see is that the teacher has a personal connection to you, so that they can say something specific that differentiates you from other recommendations. Because if it's just that Johnny was a good student, he did all of his work, he's intellectually curious, he'd be great at your school, that could be written for almost anybody. So, I mean, that's important. You want all that stuff in your letter, but you also want it to say, and Johnny did a great project for me. You might want to remind them of something you did in the class. You might want to remind them of being helpful for other students or whatever it may be. So that I'm saying that from personal experience, it's really, really helpful when writing a letter.
Thank you, Marjan. Okay, any questions, anybody at all? Sorry, that was super fast, but again, you'll have the video follow-ups. Take your time with those, watch them as many times as you want. You can always shoot us an email if you have specific questions. Anybody?
We will we'll also check in about this on Saturday. We have our first Upward Bound, we would normally have the weekend academies where we would have you all to Boone and you would stay in the hotel, and for you guys, now that you're seniors, you would have a couple hours working on your college applications in Edwin Duncan in the computer lab. But instead of doing that, we're going to have a little meeting on Saturday, just a virtual meeting with all the Upward Bound students. It should take about an hour, and we'll meet with your Atom groups, and we'll check in with you all about where you are with your college applications and work on those together some this Saturday. So we can do whatever homework assignments Tracy and Marjan give us. We can do it together on Saturday.
Great. Okay. Anything else? Anybody?
I have one question.
Yeah.
It is referring to the fees. Are we I know that Upward Bound covers it, but I'm not sure how much.
Yeah, I can answer that question. So when you go through your Common App, there is a question in like the personal info section that says, do you qualify for a fee waiver? And all of you will say yes, because you participate in Upward Bound. That's one of the options. Another option is that you get free lunch, you use the waiver to take the SAT, which you all did. And so you can check that, and it will actually send an email to your school counselor to approve that fee waiver. And that's a fine way to do it. If you run into something where you can't get a fee waiver or it doesn't go through somehow, then we'll pay that extra money for you. You just have to tell us that you need us to pay it, and we'll get it in your, some of those we have to log into a portal or something. But yeah, don't pay any of your own money for fee waivers or for application fees. We'll make it so you don't need to pay anything.
And Frida, that happens at the very, very end of the application, right before you submit. So you have a little bit of time to work on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, if that's it.
I just want to make one quick announcement,
Yeah.
just a reminder. We've been mentioning that we're going to have these individual meetings. They're not going to start until next week. So we're not going to do them tomorrow or Friday. You'll be getting messages setting up your time. So just to avoid any confusion, if you don't meet with someone this week, Tracy or me this week, that's okay, because we're not doing it till we get further into the program.
Okay, just a quick question. So where you put your counselors under references, do you need to follow up with them for them to complete and submit whatever they need to on references?
You can see when they've completed it. So just kind of keep an eye on that. And if you're getting close to deadlines, absolutely go ahead and reach out to them and make sure that they're aware. But once you connect them, as long as you put all the information in correctly, they should get an email and should log in and complete the information. But again, just keep an eye on that, and it will show as completed in the Common App once they've done that. So if not, it's perfectly acceptable to just give them a little nudge and say, hey, just wanted to remind you that my application deadline is coming up.
And it's great to do that, and you want to make sure that you don't do it, say, just the day before the deadline. Give them a few days, but also keep in mind, especially because of COVID, but this time of year is always busy for your teachers writing recommendations. So you don't want to pester them. You don't want to send weekly reminders, because then you're getting on their nerves. You want to be in that sweet spot of helpfully reminding and providing information without becoming a nuisance. So just make sure that everything's happening without, being an irritant on your recommender. That's no good.
And sorry, Laura, I didn't see a clarification from this before we got on. So as far as homework assignments and posting these videos, we're going to have a new classroom for this group. Is that right? Okay.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Okay, great.
A Google Classroom, we can make one. If it works, if it's just videos, we can just send out a group email so they all get the videos every week.
Okay.
We can talk about what you think would be best.
Okay, perfect. Either way, we'll get you that information, guys, and just let us know if you have any questions.
What would you like them to do for next week? To make their accounts?
Yes, for sure. Create your account. And I would go ahead and add just what we did today. You can do more if you want, obviously, but definitely do the My Colleges tab and go ahead and start adding all of your colleges in. That way you're going to see recommendations of who you need to ask, because again, remember, that's kind of the pressing issue. That's why we wanted to cover it early on in the process. You do need to go ahead and start preparing to ask for those recommendations. So add all of your colleges. And I know that may change. You can always add more later. You can delete colleges later, but just make sure that you've started adding your colleges to the My Colleges tab. Marjan, anything else before next week?
I feel like there was something that we had mentioned on the initial list of things, but we'll include it in the email if there's anything else. And one last thing about recommendations that just occurred to me. If you have one school that requires 3 letters and you have another school that doesn't require any, or only requires 1, then you're going to be picking and choosing who you ask to send to each school. So just keep in mind, some schools don't want more than what they ask for. They don't have the optional situation. So go ahead and think of probably 3 as your maximum number, and then you can maybe just ask Mrs. Smith just to do 1 letter, and then you've got Mr. Jones is writing 4. And you just want to keep track of who you've asked to do what. Well, we're really excited to work with you guys. Thank you so much for being here today. And we will, you'll be getting some emails about our individual meetings and then also what you need to be doing in the next week.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. And
Thank you.
we'll do this again next week. Except next week we will actually start talking about like each section of the application. So we'll do this every Wednesday for the next couple weeks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.